All right, so now that we know we're making the right torque request to increase power, now we need to update the torque model so that we can safely add boost. So we're going to open the torque model folder, and actually first we're going to save bin as V003, and we'll just notate that we are now messing with the TTA-ATT tables. Alrighty, so what happens is when you press the throttle pedal, you send a torque request. We covered that in the last video. That torque request becomes converted into an airflow, a target airflow volume essentially, or a airflow mass. So if you're requesting 400 Newton meters of torque and you're at 2,500 RPMs, it knows that it's going to take approximately a little over 1,000 milligrams per stroke of air mass in order to make that amount of power. Now, it's actually a lot more complicated than that because all of these numbers get processed in the background of the ECU, and there's things like spark efficiency and all kinds of other nonsense taken into account. But the problem is, because we're going to be, even though we're not going to be making more than 550 Newton meters of torque, we need to ensure that we're requesting more airflow than necessary due to inherent inefficiencies. And even though we're probably only going to see about 1,400 or 1,500 milligrams per stroke in reality, at least as far as the ECU logging stuff goes, it's going to be running off the table, and basically we need to increase these numbers. So this is actually covered really well in the basics guide if you're part of the Facebook tuning group. Links for everything are in the description as well, by the way. But this is covered really well right here, pretty early on. So basically in 3D view, and my stock tables are actually pretty decent in the grand scheme of things. Some of them look a lot worse. But bottom line, we're going to be extending these tables to account for more air mass. So what we are going to do, we'll take a look at this thing in the 3D view. We can see like my table is pretty linear aside from maybe that last row or so. So what we're going to do, we're going to copy, let's see, 400, 425. We're going to delete this entire table. I'll just put 0. We're going to copy these ones and move them up. And paste them in place. This bottom row is going to need to be deleted, so all right, so we got to move 450 up, 500 up, and 550, and we're going to make this last row 600 Newton meters. All right, so if we look at the table now, obviously it's pretty bad, pretty goofy, but extending it is as simple as we're going to just drag all of these and move that up to where it looks like it makes some sense. Alrighty. So in the 3D view, that looks pretty good. Good enough. So we'll close out of that. And maybe what we'll do is we will... let's take a look here. That's not like super realistic. Honestly, all these airflow model numbers are kind of bullshit to begin with. So, I mean, as long as you get them in the ballpark, stuff will be good enough. One thing to understand is, like, notice how we changed the axis here. I've mentioned it before, but it's going to change the axis on everything else as well. That means if we don't change every one of these tables, including the port flap high and port flap low, it's going to mean that what previously was a 425 Newton meter row has to be updated. So we're going to go through all of these tables one at a time. I'll do the first couple. And yeah, we will update these. So as a reminder, we're just copying the bottom 3 rows, going up to the 450 row, pasting them in, and then we are increasing the 600 Newton meter row to be basically linear. Now these tables here, the torque to airflow, the airflow to torque tables are especially important because those are used for DSG things. Obviously, I guess it matters less if you have a manual car, but yeah, something to consider. All right, now this one here is kind of goofy looking. If you'll notice that it's the last 2 rows are kind of funny, so we're going to drag all of these up as well, make that look sort of linear, and boom, done. So just be aware of that. All right, so we have all of our torque to airflow tables taken care of. They're all extended out to 600 Newton meters, and they're showing, you know, more air mass to make that number. So we're going to go ahead, we will save it real quick, and we're going to minimize those. Now, the port flap high means that when the intake manifold flaps are closed. Port flap low is when they are open. So low is pretty much going to be the only one that you're only ever going to see at higher air masses, because that's anytime that you go wide open throttle and you're requesting a ton of power, you're probably going to be on the port flap low maps. So that's all right. But we also need to take care of these airflow to torque tables. My understanding is when there's a certain amount of airflow being made, this is the torque output, and this also is what gets sent to the DSG if you have one. So having these tables match and make sense versus, you know, whatever the whatever your TTA tables, your torque to airflow tables say, you want to make sure that the airflow to torque tables are extended as well. So we're going to do something similar. Let's delete this 900 row. So, and we're just going to make those 0 just to keep track of. And copy all of these. And then we're going to bump all these rows up. So 1049.99. And we're going to make this last one, we'll make it 1800 milligrams per stroke. So now when we look at it in the side view, we're going to do Surprise, more of exactly what we've been doing. Extending these tables upwards. And if we take a look at the guide, again, it mentions how the torque to airflow and airflow to torque tables are, related to each other. So read up on it there. I read it, I don't know how many times, and it took forever to make sense. So this is ultimately the easy button of what I found works. All right, and with all that done, we're going to go ahead and save it. All right, so let's take a look at VVL 0, intake 0, exhaust 0. So we're looking at, actually, we want to look at the port flap low. So we'll look at the 000 table on both TTA and ATT. And we'll take a look here. So 600 Newton meters, calling for around 1700 milligrams per stroke. And, 1800 milligrams per stroke being, 600, 650, whatever. Sure, it's close enough. We've extended the airflow tables so that, we're not running off of the map when we're making more boost. So we'll see what happens. These tables, by far, one of the things I hated the most when I first started learning to tune, mainly because I tried to way overthink what was actually being done.